Fingers crossed everything just worked. Yeah, we have audio. Hey everybody, welcome back. Yeah, cool. Right, let's go. Why not? So, in spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Tonight, why we're all here, and if you're watching from home, welcome back again. First up tonight, we have Daniel's going to take us through modernising haptics. Matt is going to take us through a lovely quote from a long time ago, but it essentially boils down to syncing data between multiple devices, and if you've ever tried to do this before, you know how much of a headache this can be. And then at the end, we have a grammatical error, but we also have a panel. We have two presenters here in person, and we'll have two joining us remotely. We're going to be talking about WWDC and the things we would like to see at WWDC. It helps if you can actually see the panel titles. Just a reminder that we have our code of conduct as well. And our community is dedicated to providing an inclusive environment for everybody. The full code of conduct is on our website, just there. But if you are feeling like you're being harassed, or if you notice somebody else is in an uncomfortable situation, or if you have any other concerns, please get in touch. There's multiple ways you can report something that's going on, or via the website there, and you can remain anonymous if you choose to as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping for the people in our audience here. The toilets, if you haven't seen them already, back down past the entrance where you came in, just keep going straight, there's all signage down there. The emergency exit, if you need to use it, is straight down the stairs, past the meeting rooms to the rear wall, and then turn left. And if you haven't already, please check in. I'm pretty sure Baz has been harassing everybody as they've come in anyway, so good for that. You may notice some people wearing some coloured dots on their shirts or jackets or other clothing. If you are new here, you're hopefully wearing a blue dot. Please make those people feel welcome if it's their first time here. And if you do need some help, anybody with a red dot is one of our volunteers who can help out and give you directions on whatever you might need. So just a reminder that while some of us are here back in person, we do have two audiences tonight. And I should actually look at the other audience sometimes too, that would be helpful. We want to consider that both audiences are equal. We don't want this to be a case of where people feel pressured to have to come back in person to get the best experience. We want to make sure this community is inclusive for as many people as we can. So people who don't feel safe coming in, can't come in, or prefer to stay at home, we hope you continue to join us month to month. And we hope that this experience is as good as it has been in the last 12 months. Righto, so one of the changes that we're going to do as a result of this is to asking questions. If you are here in the audience, please don't interrupt the presenters. We'll be doing questions at the end. But if you do want to ask a question, you need to ask on Slack. There'll be no hands or no one shouting out from the audience to ask the presenter a question. Please post your questions in the meetup channel on Slack. And then the MC, that's me this month, I'll go through and I'll ask those questions on your behalf. In that way, our remote audience can also have the opportunity to ask questions as we go as well. And as always, these things are fully open to change and feedback. If it works well, we'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. But we always welcome feedback on that. We'd like to thank our sponsors as well. We can't put these events on, and we especially can't buy the beers and do everything else that we do without even paying for this venue, for that matter. We can't do all of that without our sponsors. So I'd like to thank our gold sponsor, Itty Bitty Apps. And our silver sponsors, REA Group, Latitude, and Cognizant. Big thanks to those four companies. All right, so just a quick look at the other stuff that's coming up. If you don't know, WWDC is next month, Apple's online developer conference. and it is, well, it's online now. It wasn't before last year, but it's online again this year. Second week of June. Pay to just stay online or stay here, and we'll have that panel talking about this exact event coming up 3rd tonight. We also have a drinks night that is on the 25th of May. Check out meetup.com for that, Tuesday the 25th. Check out meetup.com for the details of that one. We normally do have a hack night running month to month too, but we're not bringing that one back just yet. We're going to wait and see how this plays out first before we try and increase our workload, that sort of thing. Also worth checking out some of our other groups, like Sydney CocoaHeads, GDG Melbourne, if you're into the Android side of the fence, or meetup.com/theweb, which is the Melbourne web group. Definitely a lot of great content going around on all of the different platforms that we all work with every day. But if you want to find more about us, obviously the website is melbournecocoaheads.com. We mostly operate through Slack, so check out melbournecocoaheads.com/Slack. And obviously if you want to talk about tonight's event or ask questions, jump in the Meetup channel. And we're also at Melbourne Cocoa on Twitter, and we will post most of our news and announcements on Twitter as well. Just a little bit more about Slack. We have a number of channels that are really great. There's also a bunch of channels dedicated to different technologies, like a Swift channel, there's an AppKit channel, Swift UI channel. We have the Meetup channel is probably the most important one, where you can talk about tonight's event. We have a volunteers channel, which is if you want to give us a hand running these events, it's always welcome. We have a jobs channel for if you're looking to work or you're looking to hire. People can't actually see me again. There we go. So if you're looking to work or looking to hire people, there's a jobs channel on there. And if you're interested in speaking, and finding speakers is the hardest part about putting these events on. So if you're interested in speaking, please jump on our speakers channel and let us know. We can, if you want to give speaking a go, but not sure what to talk about, we've got a list of topics that we can help you through. And we're more than happy to provide mentoring as well, check over your slides, whatever you might need to help you feel comfortable presenting. And just a note on that, we are accepting remote presentations as well. If you can't make it into the venue, we can always dial you in remotely. So the stuff that we've shipped this month, Itty Bitty Apps has released a beta of the next version of Reveal, which is looking incredible. So it's got a powerful new UI for Big Sur, massive performance improvements in Intel and Apple Silicon Macs. If you want to join the private beta, the details are on the website, the Reveal app. The link there, and there's also a Reveal channel on our Slack as well, where you can ask. Also, this month, Michael got in touch to say that he has released added macOS support and automation through shortcuts to a tool he's built called Focused Work, which is a simple, flexible, focused timer that helps structure your time. It's really great to see more and more apps adopting not only macOS support, but all of the system functions like shortcuts and that sort of stuff. Tell us what else you've shipped. Like, the members of the community are always really happy to hear what else is going on, try out other people's apps, especially if you're looking for test flight testers and stuff like that. Let us know on Slack. All right, that's me done. Time for our first presentation. Daniel, we'll get you going. We'll be back in just a moment.
various, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So yeah, it's the top layer of the file. You can have like your version and patterns that you want. And so you can actually have, on the left side, I'll be mostly focusing tonight on, which is just your events, your event parameters, and it looks like.
All right, that's good. I'm good. Hang on a second. Plan C. Always good to have backups. This is not a long cable though. There we go.
All right, cool. Let's try this again. Yep, so tonight I'll mostly be focused on the left side with the events, times, event types, the durations, and actually some of the parameters such as haptic intensity. You can also have dynamic parameters that will change. Okay. That's not good. It's actually mirroring. Give me a moment.
No, it's not mirroring it.
Yep. I can't even see my cursor now.
Slow. This is actually surprisingly a lot easier when everybody's remote. I never thought that would be the case. Okay, hopefully that stays now.
All right, let's try this again. Yeah, so I was just going over the dynamic parameters that you can have. So dynamic parameters actually affect the whole entire haptic, not just like one off. It like combines both of them to eventually be like a certain pattern. So actually, let's look at an AHAP file and some of the code to use it. So as we can see here, we have an AHAP file. Looks like JSON, honestly. Usually at the top you have a version and some metadata that you'll have with it. And then you have your patterns. And so each pattern is just an event. So here we're looking at like a double haptic that's synchronized with some audio. And so here we have like a transient one, which is just like a one-off type haptic. You also have haptic continuous. And then so you have event parameters as well, which is, you can have haptic intensity, sharpness, and some of the additional ones are like attack time, decay time, release time, and you also have some audio like brightness, pan, and pitch. So it actually makes it really like customizable. Pre-core haptics, it was really hard just to synchronize your haptics together with some audio. Yep, and so if you go and look at the all right. So if you go to use it, it's actually really straightforward to use. So you just need to create an engine, get it started, get it prepared ahead of time, and then afterwards, when you want to go to play it, you can just call via the bundle path and get the URL for it, and then pass it into the engine.play pattern. I wish I could actually show you all, but I can't really. They'll hardware support for it. So let's see. Actually, that's actually all I had. That was a quick lightning talk tonight. So you can actually see more of this just on the GitHub repo, some more documentation, and the HAP file image that I gave. Yep, thank you.
Apologies about the audio issues. Cool, that's great. Sorry about it, but if you're watching from home, it should be good from now. I can hear the crackling is gone. So next up we have Matt, who is going to take us through data syncing.
Come from a cycling computer, and cycling computers are very, very, very constrained devices in that they deal with a format called .fit, which is a binary format. If you ever want to know the ins and the outs of the details, the site here will give you some good insights into that. Needless to say, when you're looking at the file, you need to iterate over its contents in byte chunks and then sort of try and match up the data that you see to different types of messages that it will provide. Now, that's all as far as the reading in of the data, but that's only half of the story. When you're talking about bringing files into an app, you need to have the app understand what are the different ways of actually loading this data. One of those is by a drag and drop. So here on a Swift UI view, you can just go, okay, your Swift UI view, when you drop in a file, you perform an action. So that's one way of dealing with it. Another way is by doing what's called a document group. Document group maps very directly through to your older style document-based apps in it that it will provide all of your open and your save and other such niceties along with it. Yet another way is to use the file import modifier. So the file import modifier tends to take the item provider, but this is bringing up something along the lines of the UI document view controller, which is an unwieldy thing that presents your view on iOS, allowing you to select a file from iCloud or Dropbox or something like that. In SwiftUI, it's a bit of a pain to interact with, but this is how you would do it. Now, the next side of it is, okay, you've got the data in, you've provided a way of introducing this data to the app. How do you then take the data from something in memory and start to model it in a way that's appropriate for your app? A couple of concerns you have here. You've got things like, how easy do you want your data to be analysed? How easy do you want your data to be retrieved or searched? Is your data something that will be updated very regularly? Or do you want to actually start allowing the user to provide some metadata around what you've created? So these are some of the concerns. Now, being a cyclist, cyclists love their data, and one of the things is maybe over 5 or so years, you've probably got, say, 30,000 of these files. What then happens when you try to import them? So this sort of is one of the questions that you will need to think through when you're defining a data structure. You will need to go, well, you've got a lot of files there. Do you want to have your files just as raw bytes? Do you want to then try and denormalize them or anything like that so they're easier to analyze, search, and whatnot? Also, one of the things, particularly with Fit, is Garmin, who are the owners of the file type, will sometimes come along and add new types in. They will add new messages, new support for new power meters and stuff like that. How do you then go and update your, in this case, core data structure to be something that will allow for all of these changes? It's another concern. I'm happy to chat about my approach over beers. It's a bit too much for a slide, I'm afraid. The next concern you have is once you've got all of these bits of data imported into the app, is how do you go about displaying them back to the user? Apple with SwiftUI introduced the fetch results property wrapper. Sorry, the fetch request property wrapper. I always get this particular one mixed up a bit because there's also fetched results, and even though the fetch request is a wrapper, the type of its values is in fact a fetched result, so slightly confusing. The problem with fetch request as a property wrapper is that at the moment, as in macOS 11 and 10.15, iOS 13 and 14, is it doesn't support section data. And also, when you create it, it will assume that it's being created on a view, which means that it will pick up the managed object context from the environment variable, an environment property. And if you're doing the smart thing of putting all of your sort of data access into a view model or a different type outside of your view, you actually can't use fetch request because it then has no access to an appropriate managed object context. Rather thankfully, we still have access to NS fetched results controller, which will allow you to keep doing things in the old-fashioned, the existing and supported way of core data that has been around for a while. Fetch results controller allows for sectioning of data. It will also do the wonderful thing of working on a background context instead of your main context, and other nice things like that. Search results. So searching in macOS 10.15, iOS 13 is a bit fraught in that there's no lazy grid properties. Instead, when you create a VStack or a list, you end up loading absolutely everything into memory, and that is a world of pain and hurt. Okay, the magical solution. So the magical solution is what Apple has provided as part of iOS 13, 14, and corresponding macOS. And that is the NS Persistent CloudKit container. When you create a core data stack, in modern times you would create it with a persistent container and a subclass, there's also NS Persistent CloudKit container, which has as its subclass the older NS Persistent container, so they can be used interchangeably to an extent. And it's this CloudKit container that will allow you to have the magical syncing from your core data implementation through to CloudKit, and will handle all of the inserts, updates, deletes, managing multiple devices, push notifications, all of that from core data as well. When you create a new project in Xcode, you have a fancy checkbox. When you do includes core data, you can also go set up with CloudKit. It is a bit harder to retrofit onto an existing project. The main issue there is it, to my understanding, relies on the sort of save history of your core data types and uses that to determine what gets synced up to CloudKit or not. So if you've got an existing app that you're then wanting to introduce CloudKit sync to, it becomes a bit more difficult. It is a black box solution in that Apple takes care of absolutely everything, which is really, really good and makes a lot of sense in a narrow set of requirements. But again, if it suits your requirements, absolutely go for it. There are limitations on the data types that you can have in core data that get synced, and that's due to CloudKit having restrictions on its particular types. So if it knows a mapping between a core data type and a CloudKit type, it will all work out really, really well. Another thing that I'll touch on a bit more in a short while is there is a difficulty to disable and enable this interaction dynamically. It is assumed that when you are creating the app that you either create it with or without the CloudKit sync. If the CloudKit sync is there, it's on, and it can't be turned off. And for a lot of apps, that works really, really well. Great for new projects. If your data model is very simple, works really, really well. It offers a great user experience, and all of your edge cases around syncing and managing data are taken care of as well. Now, one of the things that is definitely important these days is privacy. So when a user is making use of the app, your app, any app, there is always a desire to understand how that data gets used and whether that data gets shared to someone else or even stored remotely. So when you're doing a sync between core data and CloudKit, you've got a couple of options for where that data will end up. In the majority of cases, if the user says, yes, I want this data to be stored, it will end up in their private CloudKit database. The other options are a shared database or a public database. Who has access to the private database is very much just the user. So you as an app developer don't have access to their data. You never will. It's always only the user that has the ability to retrieve that data or make any modifications. Can restrictions be placed around data when it gets shared? Yes. When you put something into the shared database, you can go, I want this to only be visible for the next 24 hours or something like that. That is quite a good thing from a privacy perspective where you go, okay, I'm making this shared, I will put it as a public link to a website, the website will display it, but after 24 hours or whatever you decide, we'll start tearing that down. Okay, the fun stuff. Having covered importing the file, presenting some stuff to the user, reading the data, the magical solution, let's actually start looking at the manual solution. So for me, with the data I've been dealing with it, one of the bigger things is I want to make sure that the user's data is only ever theirs and that no one else can interact with it. So the privacy is a definite feature, meaning the user is able to enable, disable the CloudKit interaction, and that pretty much means I need to take care of everything myself. So, as Rob said at the start of the evening, manual CloudKit syncing is always a bad idea. There are so many rough edges, so many things you need to take care of. It's just something you don't really want to be undertaking unless there's a real need. So all of your error cases need to be handled. If you look at Apple's documentation, you will see that this is constantly called out. Keeping track of user changes is very painful. If your devices are always online, if the app's always launched, then you can make use of silent push notifications to share the data around. But what happens if you're off on a 5-day adventure without any cell coverage? How do you actually make sure that all of your changes end up in the right spot? This is something you will need to take care of, and there are ways of doing it. If you've got people using multiple devices, multiple at the same time, then you have to worry about conflict resolution. So say I do an update from one device, and then before a second device comes along and sees the update, I delete the file or the record. How does that get resolved? These are things that you will need to understand and think through and write into your approach. Okay, code time. sending data to CloudKit, need to go through a couple of steps. You need to first check for the user being signed in. Then you've got things like your inserts, your updates, and your deletes, as with many other approaches. So because all of this combined stuff is the new hotness, I wrote an extension on the container to get the status, and here we are. Just works with the standard callbacks that get done on the account status, and then exposes it as an any publisher. Inserting new records. So when inserting it with CloudKit, your terminology that you tend to use is a record, and it maps to a CK record type, and that CK record holds all of your different values and your fields and your stuff like that. So when you are inserting data, you want to create a modify record operation. This operation takes your records to save and the IDs of what to delete. Probably best to talk at this moment about what a CK record ID is. That is the unique identifier to the thing that you're dealing with. Quite often you want to actually be providing this yourself than relying on it being a random UUID. So for me, I decided that a hash of the binary data is the appropriate thing to use as that ID. And that way, if multiple devices try to upload the same file, it will just go, hey, this thing already exists. Fairly simple. So that's what we are seeing here. Similarly, for updates are straightforward. You're using the same operation, but this time you're going, hey, just save all of these changes. It's probably okay to go, your save policy of all keys is good based on your own app. That may or may not be the case. I found this is okay. Again, for deletes, you're doing a modify record operation which will take in the IDs of what you want and then call that operation on the particular CloudKit database. With the operations, you often have some callbacks that get called, like a per record operation or a completion operation or a delete operation. And you can use these to get an understanding of stuff like progress, whether a particular record has failed or whether everything has failed and stuff like that. Cool. Now, the other side of it, so there's the side of pushing everything up, but what about the other devices that you want to have the data visible on? That's the fetching from CloudKit. For inserts, in this case, I'm just looking at what isn't in the local database and going, okay, give me everything up in the cloud and just pull it down and insert it. The import operation is an operation I've built myself, and that will do the asynchronous file loading and other things to make sure everything gets created okay. Updates, again, you get told when a record has been updated. I'll cover the exact how that happens shortly, but what what happens is you go, okay, for this record ID, I know it has been updated, and I will then fetch all of the changes for it and import it. Fun things of identifying changes. So CloudKit has the advantage of going, hey, here's a whole heap of changes, go about doing your work on it. And that happens as a result of subscriptions. So for each device that is wanting to be told about the updates, you need to create a subscription. For my case, it's quite beneficial to go, here's a string that identifies the type, and then a UUID that I've generated and stored in the user defaults, which actually then identifies the device. So this will create that subscription which will listen via push notifications for inserts, updates, and deletes. You can have multiple different subscriptions, so you can have one subscription for inserts, one for updates, one for deletes. In this particular case, I think it's fine as is. One of the things to watch out for if you're needing to create multiple subscriptions is that you will need to do them sequentially. If you try and fire off, say, 3 or 4 subscription saves simultaneously, CloudKit will fail. So just something to be aware of. As mentioned before, all of this happens via push notifications. So CloudKit will send a silent push notification to your device going, here's stuff changed. How that's set up back here when you create the subscription is you put in some notification options saying should it send the content available. You set it to true and it becomes a silent push notification. Silent push notifications are advantageous in that it will not prompt the user for a request to allow the push notifications. With SwiftUI, in my case, everything is built with SwiftUI. I need to provide an app delegate through to the app, and the app delegate is what handles the receiving of the remote notifications. So for this, when I determine that it's an insert, an update, or a delete, I then tell other parts of the app using, again, notification, which of the records need to be inserted, updated, or deleted. With SwiftUI, this is how you say you need the app delegate. At the moment, with macOS 11 and iOS 14, you don't have appropriate types on app or window group or anything like that to say handle remote notifications, so you still then need a type to do it, which is what is exposed via the application delegate adapter. And that is all that I have for this evening. Were there any questions, Rob?
Yes, there are. All right, give me a second. I forgot that one of the worst parts of having to read people's questions out is pronouncing their usernames. So apologies if I get it wrong. Mosh or Moshi has a couple of questions for you. That's not the right one that was shown on there. Anyway, can you further elaborate on the difficulties of adding CloudKit Sync to the existing app or to an existing app that uses core data?
Okay. Elaborate on the problems of migrating from an approach that has core data to something that has core data plus CloudKit. If you are going for Apple's magical solution, that is using the CloudKit provider, I'll just call it that because I've name blanked on the actual type name. What you will need to do is you will need to take all of the data out of its existing store, move it to to a newly created store that is part of the CloudKit container, and doing that will then allow CloudKit to pick up all of the changes, all of the existing data from your old store. So that is one of the big things you need to do at the start. You then need to go, okay, does my my core data schema actually match up reliably to the CloudKit one? And can I use the magical syncing that Apple provides?
So just for my clarification, to summarize, you can use the same model, but you would open up a cloud container side by side and then migrate data from one to the other and then delete the old one.
Yep, that's correct.
Cool. So Moshi had a second part of that question. He says, as someone who's been trying to avoid it, do you have any idea whether adding CloudKit sync for core data for the purpose of syncing across devices requires me to make a HTTPS declaration before the US authorities?
I am not a lawyer.
That is the correct answer. You're just using the built-in system APIs, right? I don't imagine it's any different from... But I'm also not a lawyer, for the record.
Yes. I do not believe so, and I have not made such a declaration, but I cannot say whether that's completely and utterly above board. It is the same as any other HTTPS connection you're using and stuff like that, so yeah.
Cool, well those are the only two questions that we've had come through. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, so if you're watching from home, we're going to take 2 minutes to set up our panelists here in the studio. What do you call this? The ballroom, the YBF ballroom. Wow, I'm getting a big head now. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Do that. How about that? Can you hear us now? Okay, they can hear us. Can we hear them? Apparently not.
It's been a learning experience.
Well, yeah, it's just going so well. It helps if I turn their audio on.
That'd be nice.
Right.
Oh, hello.
No, so there we can, it's highlighting that they're talking.
They're lighting up like their frames should be talking.
Oh, my head just twisted off. Hello. Can you hear me? Look at that. Wait.
That's what everyone's tuning into this stream for.
Yeah,
Weird
sensible
antics.
discussion.
It's great because the people on the stream can actually hear them, but we can't hear in the room.
So the stream can hear
I
it,
hear
but
Hugh.
no one in the room can.
Yep.
Can you hear me, Hugh?
I can hear you, Pat.
It's a comfy chair, at least.
Sort of. My elbows don't fit in the same time. You have to put them above.
Maybe just the in-person one.
Plan C, let's try this way. All right, talk now, guys.
Hello, everyone.
Hooray! Technology, what a wonderful thing.
I think we can start then.
All right, let's
Good to
actually
be
get
here.
started then. Okay, so introductions again. If you're watching on the TVs from left to right, top to bottom, we have Matt Gallagher, Adam Campbell, Hugh Rollins, and Pat Brown. And everybody can hear everybody now. So, let's kick off our panel. So today's topic of discussion, now that we're finally here, is what do you want to see at WWDC? As we know, WWDC 21 is online again this year. It's coming up in a couple of weeks, I think, or 3 weeks. So we'll go on the monitor order for now, but we'll start with what are the top 3 things that you'd like to see this year at WWDC? And it could be anything.
I mean, I assume we're not talking about hardware. We want software because we're programmers.
Well, no, it could be products. It could be,
I'm definitely mentioning that MacBook 16-inch. Hopefully M2.
You're sitting there waiting for a new dev machine, are you?
Yes. Discovered recently that the 13-inch M1s only support one external monitor, so...
Well, yeah, they've only released low-end Mac M1 hardware. So the low end's only ever supported like small numbers of screens, crummy numbers of ports.
I'm really interested to see what they do with like any kind of expansion or beyond 16 gig. That'd be great.
But do you actually think it's going to come up at dub? Sorry.
Oh, no, go. I was going to say, like, I want to see, like, async await stuff.
Yeah, the whole set of concurrency proposals that's been discussed in Swift Evolution is definitely something I'm hoping to see, because I think it has a possibility to sort of... It depends when you play with it, but it might impact how I write a lot of my code. Not just async await, but the actor proposals as well, like how do you get things back to the main thread? And if you can simply flag classes as, you know, a main thread actor, then theoretically the language would handle all of that for you and eliminate a lot of the hassle of doing that. So yeah, on a software level, that's absolutely something I'm really keen on.
Yeah, I want to see if they come forward with any strategy on how all the new async proposals fit into Combine and their frameworks.
Do we know if
Combine
there's...
didn't really get any changes last year. So I'm thinking async await will hopefully fix that. But we'll see.
I mean, do we know if there's any overlap between the teams that do combine and the teams that are pushing concurrency through Swift? I don't always feel like there is.
I'm not going to guess on what's happening internally at Apple. Yeah. The other one I had on my list was, more SwiftUI uplift and just more work on how it you can easily adopt SwiftUI in your UIKit apps and vice versa.
In general, are you hoping to see more... Sorry, I feel like I'm talking to you, Adam, but I should be talking to the other panelists as well.
Go to train, look at the TV microphone.
Are you hoping to see new features, or are you hoping to see... Because one of the things I desperately want is like bug fixes across the board. I still feel like I'm hitting bugs all over SwiftUI, Combine, these sorts of things.
Yeah, I've seen bugs. I've also seen gaps. You go here?
So where's it?
I was just thinking, absolutely, I've seen bugs and gaps, and it's time for a... Oh, am I too loud? Shut up, Hugh.
No, that was a gesture for Rob to put his finger
Rob's
on the Touch
screen is
ID
loud.
for the MacBook.
So, yeah, bugs and gaps in SwiftUI, and it's time for a bit of a refinement. Yeah, and perhaps SwiftUI is definitely needing that. We've got a great year last year. That same momentum would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want
Everyone tends to
stuff
say
like
version
updating
3.
The old frameworks to like combine and SwiftUI. Like the AV Foundation stuff, I really feel needs to go and use publishers and stuff.
Yeah, that's difficult, kind of using a lot of the old object-oriented frameworks in a slightly more kind of functional declarative world. It all feels a bit strange. You say AV Foundation, but there's any number of kind of settings, the pasteboard, all of these things that just feel really weird, just trying to use them inside declarative. Do you find yourself using SwiftUI? Are you still writing UIKit primarily?
In my work, no SwiftUI yet, but I've dabbled.
Hugh, how does that impact you? I mean, obviously, if you're using SwiftUI, these are going to be the things you're looking for. But if you're using UIKit, are you hoping for ergonomic improvements, or are you hoping for bridging, or are you not caring?
In real life, like my job, I'm mainly doing UIKit. So it's really just experimenting on the weekend when I'm doing SwiftUI, and the experimentation, I'm running into lots of little gaps and problems where I've got to fix it myself by jumping back into UIKit. So yeah, that's where I'm getting.
Is anyone hoping for more UIKit classes? Entrench you deeper?
I'm not really.
Silence
I
speaks
come
volumes
from
there.
like a React Native background, so using UIKit, I never really did.
I did like a lot of the advances that I've been seeing in UIKit. I had the fun of wrapping some certain things in SwiftUI, and having those action methods on control has made things a lot easier to be able to just add a closure onto UI controls for different state changes. So that it is good to see that uplifted, even still.
All right, so as we know, WWDC is online only again this year. What do we think of the new format compared to the old one? Hugh, let's start with you. What do you think of the new WWDC?
I love it. I thought it was great. It was much better than watching all my friends go around sunny San Francisco while I sit around in cold Australia. No, it is. I like that the presentations are kind of shorter. They're as long as they need to be. They don't go on. They have a chance to cut them and edit them and prepare them really well. I think it's good, and I know that some of the Apple engineers really like it as well. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
I don't know, I have an instinctive aversion to well-edited stuff. I'm kind of accustomed to people putting on, you know, talks full of tech problems and...
Like today.
Just that kind of authentic feel. So I'm a little sad that a bit of that is gone. Just people, can you hear me? You know, am I doing this right? I get that it's smoother and it's easier to get to the point, but I'm old.
That's fun for when like the conference is on, but later on when I'm watching everything, I want it to be just get it out.
I find by that point, all I read are the transcripts anyway, so
Yeah.
I skip the video entirely.
I was going to say in one of the later questions, like, what do you want them to do differently? I want them to get more written material out there. And just, yeah.
I like the new format. I like that there are shorter targeted videos. You don't have to watch a 30-minute to hour presentation. There are some really snappy 10-minute ones that really get to the point of what's new and what's not.
I do like that they gave a lot of the presenters the ability to bring along something personal to them and sit it on their desks. I thought that was a fun little touch. People bringing like really bizarre bits of, tech arcana and...
Yeah, that was one of the fun things to watch for in every video. What is that person's thing of interest?
So I guess on that subject then, you touched on things you'd like to see differently, like more transcripts. What else would we like to see Apple change with regards to WWDC?
I almost feel like they have room with all the well-edited video to kind of backfill some content, like tutorial content or things that have kind of fallen through the gaps of time. But there's you're going to get me started on documentation, but there's a lot more things that could be documented or shown or taught.
So we had a question come through from the audience. Do we think there'll be Apple glasses released this year? Like obviously the promo material had app icons reflected in glasses. Is that too obvious, we think, or?
I think it's a tease.
No, I think we'd know more about it. I don't think the Apple glasses is something that's going to be easy to drop. Whether or not they drop more APIs for it, I mean, ARKit exists, and they've been slowly building that up over a couple years. But I think we would know more about glasses if it was 6 months away.
I think it's a bit intentional, like they want you to keep thinking about it, but I don't think they'll drop it.
Apple tend not to release hardware at WWDC. It's a big event already without anything dropping. So they can rely purely on the kind of software innovations and, hey, it's going to be iOS, what are we up to, 15? I think they know that they can rely just on that, and if they have something that's going to drop shortly after, I mean, I think they're happy now having tech events every month if they need it. So I think they'd be happy to have a tech event in July or August.
That doesn't preclude them from releasing hardware. I think if there was going to be any hardware, it would be a Mac.
Which way is that on? That's on. I think we are all expecting, as we said at the start, new MacBooks this year. Do we think there's going to be any other hardware categories? If not glass, then probably not. No?
I'm certainly not expecting it.
Yeah, I think they got a lot of the other stuff out of the way last month or two.
Yeah, AirTags people have been waiting for that for 2.5, 3 years. Weren't there like copyright numbers from at least 2019 on some of the AirTag hardware? So that kind of shows there's a huge lead time on these things. And if there was anything truly innovative, people would be rumoring it, even if their rumors were wrong. I think hardware-wise, if there's anything, it'll be an M1 Mac, but I doubt it. I still kind of feel, what are they going to do next? They definitely need to release M1 Macs that have pro capabilities, target a pro audience, but are they ready to release that? The world's full of chip shortages. I'd be surprised. I think it's going to be second half, well into the second half of the year before they do that.
Shattering my dreams.
Sorry.
So we had another question come through from the audience. I'm missing that up. Ed asks, the iPad Pro with the M1 chip is a screamer. What iPad OS changes do you think we might see to leverage that?
I mean, every year people say better iPad multitasking. It hasn't happened. Absolutely, if you were going to use the resources on an iPad, it would be in some way better multitasking. Maybe Apple will finally relent and let you at least run XPC processes in the sandbox, so you can spawn child processes, because there's already, Panic this week complained that, developing a text editor for an iPad is useless because you can't spawn a child process. I think that would be the sort of thing, if Apple wanted to mend some bridges, or at least set up the ability to use the iPad Pro in a pro sense, that would be like the minimum step to doing it. I mean, just running a child process inside the sandbox. It's not like a big ask. But, do Apple even care? There's a possibility that they just use the iPad for prototyping new technologies, 120 hertz displays, mini LED, micro LED displays. Maybe, that's its purpose. It's just the really low distribution hardware.
So I guess the obvious one that might be for the iPad that everybody in this room particularly keeps talking about is Xcode for iPad OS. Assuming that even is going to be a thing, would any of you use it?
Nah.
Like, would you make your M1 or your M1 iPad your daily driver, I guess is the question to that.
No.
Yeah, until I started using an iPad with an Apple Pencil, I didn't really have a use case for an iPad. When you use an Apple Pencil, it's suddenly there's something it can do that a Mac can't. But absolutely the worst thing on an iPad for me is always typing, and that's fundamentally what programming is as an interaction model.
Hugh and Pat, what do you guys think? Would you use Xcode on an iPad if you had one? Might make great for coding on holidays?
I was going to say maybe for a presentation.
Yeah. I'm not sure I want to code
Demonstrations,
on
presentations, yeah.
I mean, if you could come up with a kind of programming that could be like multi-touch, maybe, but I think that's kind of really out of the box thinking. I don't think traditional Xcode development would be better. In fact, I think every aspect of it would be worse on an iPad. Swift Playgrounds exists, and you can do that, and you can use that for prototyping tiny little bits of code. I think about the apps that I write, and it's like no aspect of that build pipeline would be better on an iPad. Yes, the chip is faster than the one I have in my MacBook Pro, but how do you go into the simulator and muck about with its files? How do you delete your derived data? How do you call into Fastlane? These things are not going to work without a lot of help.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where they go with iPad OS. I don't know, I'm not actually sure on their strategy there. They obviously kind of forked iOS to have iPad OS, and the Mac has gained the ability to launch native iOS apps, but I'm interested to see what they do next with iPad OS, but I kind of had no idea what exact direction it's heading. Like, a lot of pro apps were released recently, like Photoshop and more power-hungry things, but yeah, I'm not sure where it's going in the kind of productivity space.
So it sounds like we kind of feel that an iPad is great for some tasks that you can't do on a traditional Mac, but not really on a Mac. So no one here is working on building Xcode for iPad OS. Great, that's good to know. A more specific question from our audience, and probably not one that you can answer, but maybe to speculate about what might be coming. Do you think Core Data will get a replacement in WWDC? Or what would you like to see in a Core Data replacement?
What would we like to see replaced?
Do we want to go Swift native, for example? Combine based? Like, how do we think we might go with this?
I mean, I feel like Apple started an interesting kind of project. If you have a look at the document-based life cycle in Swift UI, for like managing the entire app top down, just kind of giving your data over to it and letting it deal with stuff. But it's so limited. I would like to see them, that's for document controllers. I would like to see them replace other major sort of aspects of app development, but I can't think of any, like, we've mentioned AV framework and like media players and these sorts of things, and like deeper integration into various libraries, but
I almost want to hand the mic back to Matt for a bonus question.
I would probably like to see better abstraction, so I could easily sort of switch between non-structured data and core data. Like, I know that is sort of hard to do, but even just mocking stuff, I find I've got to do a bit to use core data, and I just want kind of better sort of.
So more protocol based than subclassing.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So we've got one last question. Given that we're now going into WWDC and what we want to see, do you have any recommendations of any sessions that people should go back to from the last year's WWDC or the year before? Any technologies they should brush up on heading into this WWDC?
Well, I think if you're forward-looking, you might want to brush up on where SwiftUI and Combine is at, so you can see what's changing and what direction everything's heading in. I found the ARKit stuff really useful, just because we were looking into it at the same time last year. What they were doing with depth and LiDAR was really, really neat.
My favorite thing coming out of WWDC last year wasn't actually from WWDC. It was a podcast that John Sandell did with two Apple developers, Josh Schaefer and Eliza Block. I think it was behind the scenes in SwiftUI, talking about how Xcode was being built to handle live editing of code and updating SwiftUI. If you're interested in kind of the craziness that Apple is trying to work on to try and make the developer experience better, it was very, very enlightening. Even though, you can sit in front of things like SwiftUI and go, well, these 20 things about it are glitching or not working or forcing me to restart the preview. It's still kind of fascinating to think about the challenges that they really are trying to solve.
That was a really good podcast episode, and everyone should go and listen to that. That was really good. I was thinking about some of the applications of UI outside of just of ordinary apps, like the widgets and sort of applets, for want of a better word. I think there might be something in that, in what else they're going to do later on this year or next year.
So more deeper OS integration then?
Yeah, and other share sheets, applets. I think widgets can only be done in SwiftUI. Yeah, so that sort of area.
Pat, are you on the SwiftUI train too? Looking forward to the next release?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we might call it a night there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, we'll be back in just a moment to wrap up for the night. All right, so thank you very much for coming. Sorry about the technical glitches tonight. It's very difficult to bring back, way more difficult than we expected to bridge back into the real world. Again, thanks everybody for coming, watching from home. Actually, the thing is over there. You can't even see me. I'm talking off to the side of the stage. Whoa, okay. So a big thanks to our sponsors again for supporting us again for another year. Itty Bitty Apps, Latitude Financial, REA Group, and Cognizant. A reminder that the next CocoaHeads event is the Drinks Night on the last Tuesday of the month, the 25th. Check Meetup for that, details. And now we go to the pub. Hooray! We can do that again. Just across the road is the Burke Street Green. Several people will be going for a drink after this if you want to join us. And that's it. Thanks very much for joining us either here in YBF or on the live stream. See you all next month.